This was a dinosaur that was created during the development for what would ultimately become Jurassic World. Before Colin Trevorrow would hop on board to rewrite the already existing Jurassic Park 4 script, the idea was that a paleontologist would dig up the bones of a completely made-up animal from China that doesn't exist in the fossil record. This dinosaur went through quite a lot of different designs, but it was always known as the malusaurus. Essentially, this is what was originally set in motion as the big bad dinosaur that would tear down the establishment and run amok while the park was open. Designs for the creature range from pretty interesting theropod to totally weird and unique body types. The most recognizable and probably popular of these has to be the reddish horned animal that has a very noticeable bump on its back. You can see here at this early design phase that the artists were really channeling some of those JP3 Spinosaurus vibes, and I gotta admit, this would make for one seriously cool hybrid. Now, apart from this reddish version, they actually toyed with some more beige or white colors before scaling the Malusaurus back to something a little less alien and a little more animal. And this is where you can really see how it would morph into what we all would recognize as the infamous Indominus Rex. So the story is that as soon as Trevorrow came on to direct the project, he actually went forward to Spielberg and Frank Marshall, telling them that he needed to completely rewrite the movie in order to deliver something that he actually believed in and actually felt like he could make. So all of the backstory of a completely fictitious Chinese dinosaur was tossed out in favor of something that wouldn't have to lie to the audience and pretend like it really existed. Instead, Colin chose to riff on some of the Michael Klayton themes from the original novel that involved John Hammond and Dr. Henry Wu discussing what is known as version 4.4, which is basically a protocol Wu wanted to put into place so that he could make what he called, quote, better dinosaurs that the park guests would actually like to see. And with the story being changed from making an animal up from scratch to exploring these novel ideas, the Malusaurus would evolve into the Indominus. But before that was actually completed, the JP4 Dino would undergo some more designs that were kind of a mix between the Spino version and the final form of the I-Rex. One such creation happened to feature a really bizarre looking animal that, in my opinion, kind of looks like a super soldier version of a Monolophosaurus. This version of the Malusaur was gray, and the hump on its back had kind of morphed into what looks similar to that of an Acrocanthosaur. The tail also had some noteworthy spikes that we don't really see in the final version. Now, another design would be far more colorful and a bit more related to what we would see on the screen. This yellow and blue guy came with a ton of quills and a really different skull shape. The iguana-like pouch underneath its throat is also a big difference to what we'd see the Malusaurus look like before. Eventually, this dinosaur would be renamed as the Diabolus Rex, and that would eventually change into the hybrid that we all saw on screen in 2015. If you're interested in checking out these designs for yourself, please check out the concept artist's website, which will of course be linked down in the description below. Honestly, I really love all of these designs that were cooked up during the fourth film's development, and I think they all make interesting creatures in their own right. It's a shame that we can't have some sort of new side story feature all of them as unique clones, but at least we still got the Indominus out of all of this hard work. But what do all of you guys think about this early prototype dinosaur? Do you think that it would have been a better design than what we saw in the final film, or are you happy with what we ended up with? Hey guys, hope you're all doing well. Now for today's video, I wanted to talk about a dinosaur that doesn't really get brought up too often anymore. Right now, I want to go into the specific details surrounding the Diabolus Rex. So, as many of you will no doubt know by now, hybrid dinosaurs have been a thing in the Jurassic Park franchise for a very long time. But when it comes to the main big bad hybrid that would be used to push each story forward, there have really only been a handful of these creatures that have such notoriety. In the 1990s, there was of course the Ultimasaurus and the Doomsday Rex from 2 of the 3 cancelled animated series. And then much later in Jurassic World, we'd get to see the canon Indominus Rex introduced into the 4th film. However, before the Indominus made its breakthrough appearance in that movie, it was actually going through quite a lot of redesigns behind the scenes. Early on during the pre-Colin Trevorrow days, the idea behind the Big Bad Dino in Jurassic Park 4 was going to be a completely made-up animal known as the Malusaurus. Unlike the Indominus, this dinosaur was not going to have any sort of hybridized DNA in its genome, and it would instead be completely fictional from its initial conception. But this didn't really seem like it was properly conveying the spirit of what Jurassic Jurassic Park ultimately is, so this idea was abandoned in favor of the dinosaur hybrid story. Yet even then, there would still be some changes made before the Indominus Rex was finalized. You see, originally, the Diabolus Rex was what the main dinosaur in Jurassic World was going to be called before the word Indominus was chosen for use. Now, why is this so important? Well, for starters, the Diabolus Rex actually did make its way into Jurassic World through a pretty obscure and somewhat cryptic way. If you pay attention really close during the scenes where the people in the control room are tracking the animal, you can actually see that the icon that represents the Indominus is mistakenly labeled as the D-Rex instead of the I-Rex. Now, this tiny bit of trivia only exists because the name change from Diabolus to Indominus happened after the script was already written. So at one point in time, it was D-Rex that the production was going with before the finalization on the animal's name was made. Early concept art that took place before the finished Indominus design, and of course still after the malusaurus had been tossed out, featured a very different looking character. Here we can see that the Diabolus Rex was depicted as being a very bright yellow and purple looking theropod. In my opinion, this is probably the most Giganotosaurus looking of the hybrid designs that was made in early concept art. And it's also the dinosaur that we see featured in scenes like the Apatosaurus kills and the initial gyrosphere attack. I'm not so sure when exactly the Indominus Rex would be given its final name designation, or really when the more white and monstrous looking animal was created, but these early depictions of the creature were in fact what they were going with before any of that stuff got made and created for the big screen. Personally, I have to say that I think the decision to go with the design that we actually got to see in the Jurassic World movie was the right call to make in retrospect. But I will say that the Diabolus early design concepts that look like a quilled giga are really cool too, but something tells me that a brightly colored yellow animal probably wouldn't have had the same amount of creepiness to its pale white counterpart. Honestly, the coolest thing about the dinosaur, apart from this concept art to me, is the fact that in some weird way, it technically did make it into the movie through that simple control room mistake, which adds just another tiny bit of Jurassic trivia to an already vast amount of fun things to talk about.